The 9th of the 6th, 2025. The time is 3 minutes past 8, and there are two topics on the docket today as far as the F1 centric threads at which we need to put. In the first instance, we're going to talk about modern day journalism, and in the second instance, we're going to talk about stewards talking bad, violating their fiduciary duty per se, as far as Max Verstappen and criticism of him. No, it's not Johnny Herbert, but if I put the picture of Derek Warwick up there, nobody would know of whom I'm speaking. In the first instance, let's talk about Charles Leclerc. This dude has given 7 years of not only his life, but his F1 career. And F1 careers are a finite resource, are they not? They don't tend to go for much more than 10 to 15 years on average. 7 years is how long Charles Leclerc, aka modern day journalism, has stayed in that team, to his own detriment. They've been nowhere near, apart from the first half of 2022, they've gotten nowhere near having a car and mounting a campaign capable of winning silverware of the driver's variety. For that's all that Charles Leclerc's interested in, lest we forget. And he's one of the quickest on the grid. Some say point to point, potentially the quickest. So the extent of the wastage is material, of consequence. Charles Leclerc does not deserve that. Of course, it was his dream once upon a time to drive for Ferrari, but one might argue that that's mutually incompatible with his dream of winning a championship of the driver's variety. Today, Gunther Steiner come out and he's spoken about it. So too has Charles Leclerc, rebutted that in the first instance. Charles Leclerc apparently has expressed that he has given zero consideration to departing Scuderia Ferrari, despite recognising that the team is SH1T. Those are the words that came out of his mouth quite clearly. Why not, if not Charles Leclerc? If you harbour aspirations of winning titles, races and therefore championships, surely that's something that's got to be going through your head as at the time of writing. Are you ever going to win? Non-rhetorical question, chat. Is Charles Leclerc really ever going to win a championship with Scuderia Ferrari? Going into their new regulations, 2026 active aero, new power unit, 50% electrical, 50% internal combustion. Is Charles Leclerc really going to be provided a car capable of winning races and therefore championships? An SF26? Really? I think not. If past this prologue, Ferrari have lacked in the minerals for some time now. 2007 was the last time that they won any silverware, as near as makes no difference, 20 years ago. So what makes you think any different now? Yeah, of course there's been green shoots. 2.0 seconds, as near as makes no difference. Every single pit stop that this year. Bravo, Frederick Vasseur. Standing ovation, mate. But what about the rest? The car is garbage. Instability at the rear. The operating window too narrow. Politicking for the sake of politicking. Marketing for the sake of marketing. When all that counts, when all is said and done, is ultimate performance. Where did you finish in the championship? Charles Leclerc, in saying that, he's expressed that he has given zero consideration to leaving. I think he's leaking. Freudian slip settings, pathetic fallacy. You need to read between the lines here on this quote, and it's not what Charles is saying, it's what he's not saying. By dint of the fact that he has to come out and say this in the first instance tells you all you need to know. Of course Charles is thinking about this. What would I be able to do to a Lando or an Oscar in an MCL 3.9? Of course Charles thinking about this. He wouldn't be an F1 driver if he were not. Lest we forget that the modus operandi of all F1 drivers, it's a requisite to even get into the formula in the first place, is being self-serving, believing that you are the quickest driver on the grid. And Charles Leclerc, if he's the quickest driver on the grid, will demand of himself and his team, therefore, the quickest car. And Ferrari have provided him nothing that's even close to that, apart from, of course, 2022 for a couple of different races. This article continues. Leclerc's seventh season with Ferrari appears primed to end yet again in more disappointment at the side's protracted title drought since 2008 looks all but certain to continue. Of course it is. They're rubbish. They know nothing. And again, what makes it techier than techier things, per Rob Smedley, one-time race engineer of Scuderia Ferrari, them their red cars with the yellow badge and black prancing horse atop, is that if you win for Ferrari, they will adorn you. You'll be worshipped in the streets. Rob Smedley said that you'll never have to buy a drink nor a meal. That's the level of passion that the Tifosi have for Italy, the Italy team, the Italian Scuderia Ferrari. It is theirs as much as it is anybody else's. If, however, you lose in perpetuity, oh, the humanity, for the Tifosi will spit in at you in the streets, bringing shame on the family name. You don't want that. I don't want that. And Charles Leclerc here definitely doesn't want that. Ex-Haas team boss Gunther Steiner has claimed, as we are doing now, that Charles Leclerc, who made his debut in F1 in FP1 under Gunther Steiner's watch in 2016, should now, as at the time of writing, be assessing alternative options. Gunther Steiner, the legend of Drive to Survive and F1 more broadly, says the following, quote, "He needs a new challenge." Techie. No kidding, Sherlock. I don't think he needs a new challenge. He needs a car capable of winning races, Gunther Steiner, to be precise. Gunther Steiner continues on the Red Flags podcast, quote, "I think he's been there for a long time." No kidding, Sherlock. 7 years. So most F1 drivers don't have a career that lasts that long, let alone having your career and your prime waste away at a team with a name, a team called Scuderia Ferrari. What are we doing? I think he's been there for a long time, continues Gunther Steiner. Sometimes even change is good, like Sir Lewis Hamilton left Mercedes to go to Ferrari and even left McLaren to go to Mercedes. I think Charles, it's like something new, because at some stage everything just becomes routine. He's not in a position to win a championship. No kidding, Gunther. Do you know what I mean? State the obvious, sir. He has not been in a position to win a championship, not for want of talent, not for lack of speed, but for poor car wheels underneath him. They've been nowhere near, apart from, of course, a couple of races in 2020. He's not in a position to win a championship, continues Gunther Steiner. So if he maybe goes somewhere else, maybe he gets lucky. You never know. But where would he go? Gunther, this is the point, chap. Like, where's he going to go? Is there room at Red Bull in? Probably not. Do you think Max Verstappen would embrace that? Probably not. Where's he going to go then? McLaren have just signed Oscar Piastri, OJ, to a long-term deal. Lando Norris as well on a long-term deal. Where's he going to go? Mercedes. And is there any proof that Mercedes are going to be giant killers in 2026, climb back to the mountaintop and win themselves some silverware? I know not the answers to these questions. Charles Leclerc remains committed, says this article, to Ferrari. You want to hope you're not Charles Leclerc. You need to be a sellsword chap. Go to whichever team can give you the quickest car, surely. So article continues. Leclerc has revealed that he's not contemplating going elsewhere, as he remains convinced that Frederic Vasseur and the red car with a yellow badge and black prancing horse atop will be back, but that they will be back to winning ways, that Frederic Vasseur even can lead them back to the promised land. Really? How and why, sir? Based upon what evidence? Asked whether there was a chance that he could leave Ferrari, Charles Leclerc responded, who just signed a long-term deal in 2023, by the way, told L'Equipe, "Of course not. There is absolutely no chance, mate. There needs to be a non-zero probability of you considering your other options, Charles Leclerc, if again you are to harbour aspirations of winning races and therefore championships. I believe in the project and I believe in Fred. Clearly, it's a complicated moment, and in times like this, it's easy to have doubts. You're damn right. You better have doubts about this project, Charles Leclerc. Frederic Vasseur will be gonzo soon, I promise you. That's my take, my hot take. If there are not too many team principals who have gone 3 years of late, if past this prologue, and not ended up leaving or being sacked. Ferrari don't have time for patience, nor do they have time for investments that go wrong. Lest we forget that cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. Dollar bills, it's going to get techier than techie things, Jomo. You're a legend. Joanna, what are you saying? Jomo. Go on then. James says, perhaps a Braun moment. Perhaps Perhaps I don't think you're a million miles away there, mate. Lewis and Scholl should each buy a Porsche 963 and disappear off into the sunset. Oh, the humanity! It's too chaotic, these pods. Listen, I don't know. I don't know what's going to go on, but I think Charles Leclerc would need to, at the very least, consider sacking off Ferrari. They're not doing anything for him. They haven't done anything. What have they done for him lately? And again, it wouldn't be a news story, would it? If Charles Leclerc weren't so bloody fast. What he doesn't want his career to do is go in the same direction as Jean Alesi. What could have been potential wasted ultimately. Oh, and by the way, the FIA stewards are doing what you'd expect from FIA stewards. Do you know what I mean? It's always techie with these guys and girls. The one that they call Derek Warwick. Of course, it's not Derek Warwick in the thumbnail. I get it. I'm not stupid. But would any of you recognise Derek Warwick? Sometimes I've got to put the context up there in the thumb. And it's Johnny Herbert. Why? Because it wasn't too many cycles ago where Johnny Herbert was overly, almost effusive in his criticism of Maximilian Verstappen at each and every single juncture. And it's fine if you're talking to F1 TV. Do you know what I mean? If it's fine if you're in the steward's room and you're communicating these things, even if we don't agree with the criticism, even that it was warranted. But to go off on a gambling website, Johnny, and monetize your position to profit, again, I get that stewards don't get much money, expenses paid for, that's not good. And we're in 2025, it should not be that. I still think, and still that we should have full-time stewards. Surely the FIA, since they procure a or F1 even procures a service from the FIA to the tune of 100 million US dollars, surely you can afford to break off these stewards. Some full-time ones, a couple $100,000. Surely. Unless, I don't know, Mohammed bin Sulayem, the FIA president, is too busy jet-setting around the world, spending his presidential budget 1.3 million US dollars worth on PJ travel on a private jet, expensing that to the FIA. But I don't want to talk about MBS too much. I don't want to go scorched earth today. I want to talk specifically about these stewards and what they should or shouldn't be allowed to say. Johnny Herbert was a steward once upon a time, and he went into race 1 Australia Grand Prix 2025 being a steward. He was supposed to be there, wasn't he? But again, he was monetizing his opinion, as I'd argue stewards should not be doing. Again, if you're going to give your opinion in an official capacity, then that's a different thing. You could argue as a steward, you're not supposed to be giving an opinion. You're supposed to be instituting for the rules in a way that's true, set fair, consistently across all related parties, drivers, team principals, et al. Surely that's the job of a steward. And what's problematic in this is that sometimes you've got to question, I'm not sure that these guys and girls are biased. I don't think they are. But you'd be forgiven for thinking that they are because of the frequency with which they offer their opinions, not for free, but for monetary value. I get it, chat. Cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. Dollar. But I understand it, particularly if Derek Warwick and Johnny Herbert are travelling around for as near as makes no difference. No monetary gain. We need full-time stewards. It's 2025, not the bloody dark ages. This isn't 1950. Get the stewards in place, and that's not a panacea and a cure-all. But I think you would get less instances of this, like Johnny Herbert going out to a gambling website and being very open and critical of one Maximilian Verstappen, 4 soon to be 5-time champion. And here's why that's techie. Fiduciary duty settings, objectivity settings. Now, I'm not saying that Johnny Herbert was not objective. I'm not close enough to the circumstance to say definitively beyond reasonable doubt. But again, the problem is not that. It is this. You could be forgiven for listening to Johnny Herbert and thinking that that dude had some sort of deep embedded bias. So frequent were his comments about Maximilian Verstappen to a gambling website. What are we doing here? That's not the professional code of conduct. That's not ethics. That's not how I'd expect a steward officiating a $1 billion sport to behave. And ultimately that put pay to Johnny Herbert's stint as a steward, did it not? Let me read out this article per the legend that is Eric Van Haren. It is remarkable after earlier commotion surrounding Johnny Herbert that a steward now again gives his opinion to a gambling website about Thor, soon to be 5-time champion Maximilian Verstappen. There was quite a bit of fuss at the end of the previous F1 season about Johnny Herbert, who kept giving his bloody opinion to gambling websites for moolah, dinero, money. Despite his function as a steward, made the necessary statements about Max Verstappen, among others. Now another official named Derek Warwick is doing exactly the same thing, giving his opinion to gambling websites for monetary, his own monetary gain. This can't be. How are we here again, chat? I am left empty, disenchanted at the billion-dollar sport, now entity that we know and love, still continues to wade in the very murky waters of subjectivity. How can a steward be giving comment to a gambling website? You know what I mean? F1 can't even get gambling sponsors in certain territories. So how is this even sensible? How is this in line, goal congruent with the objectives of the FIA? Lest we forget, Mohammed Ben Sulayem came into power as FIA president on a campaign that was characterised, in his own words, by transparency and robust governance. How can this even be aligned? Square this regulatory circle for me, chat. Eric Van Haren continues, it's noteworthy that the FIA Motorsport Federation said goodbye to Herbert before the start of the current season, lest we forget he was due to steward round 1 Australia, because his duties, Johnny Herbert's duties as Formula 1 steward and that of a media analyst, are not compatible. Touche, that's the best thing that I've heard. Of course they're not, because a steward's supposed to be objective in their countenance and their being, and a pundit fundamentally is supposed to be opinionated. Therefore, these two roles and remits cannot exist in the same space or the same person. That's why Johnny Herbert, as much as I liked Johnny Herbert back in the day, he had to go. He was gonzo. Couldn't do both. You cannot wear both caps, especially if the regulatory body is supposed to be objective and set fair, transparent in its decision making. And then you've got Herbert getting money, and Warwick getting money for talking badly about the bloody chap. Behave yourself. This is nonsense. Ridiculous. This article continues. Herbert, like other figures in motorsport, is paid by various betting websites to give his opinion, which he still does, but not as a steward. In the run-up to the upcoming Grand Prix, the Canadian Grand Prix, Derek Warwick is now also giving his opinion, writes Eric Van Haren. In this case, at gambling website Pledgemo, Warwick, 70 years old, is still a steward and is active in that function for the Montreal Grand Prix this race weekend as a replacement for Enrique Bernaldi. What are we doing, chat? How is this even a thing, really? Beggars believe. I just don't get it. The FIA clearly don't have their regulatory arms around all the things that they need to be. It just looks bad. And it is optics sometimes. Perception is reality. If these guys and girls are coming out giving opinions, saying what needs to be said for monetary value, then what do you think it's going to be like when they get in the steward's room? You will forgive us, you and we, for calling BS on this. It feels like both of us. Maybe Derek Warwick is the most objective steward ever in F1 history, but it doesn't feel nor smell nor look like it when the dude's giving his opinions for monetary gain to gambling websites. Techie, this chap. It is very techie. But again, I think the ultimate outcome, you and me and we all know what needs to happen here. I think Derek Warwick needs to take 2 seats, mate. How can you get rid of Johnny Herbert for doing the same thing that Derek Warwick is doing and not get rid of Derek Warwick? Going to get techier than techie things going into the Canadian Grand Prix this race weekend. The Dutch press has a thing for Lewis. Not going to lie, says Joe. Benzi says Flavio will weigh all the brown envelopes before making a decision. Shouldn't be this way, mate. Cash rules everything around me. Cream, what are you meant to do, eh? This is how it works. Johnny on the betting website for F1 bets while a steward was a terrible look. The optics are really bad, mate. was just really bad. Max wanted number 3, you know, but Danny Rick had it. Dale needs a reality check, Bill. Legend, Andrew. Absolute legend. In time again. Let's go. Let's go, Andrew. Take it and take your things. Listen, we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. Between now and next time, subscribe, like, comment, and share. It would be remiss of me not to say that. Between now and next time, as always, the prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.